I know with this the third panel discussion on similar topics. It's just that we have a ringside view into the industry, and we feel that there's not enough being done, and there are so many layers to peel this onion around talent management. And I mean, irrespective of how many conversations we've had, we still wouldn't have touched all aspects of it. So that's the intent of having so many curves and cuts around each one of these conversations. So the structure of the conversation very similar to what you've been through. So we will have a discussion for about 30 minutes. We'll open up for Q&A. But if you have a question that can't wait, by all means raise your hand and we'll take it. We'll be happy to take questions anytime. So that's how it's structured. To start with, we would like to get a context of the audience. So how many of you are directly in the HR function here? Can I have a raise of hands, please? Oh, awesome, it's about a little more than half of the crowd. Anybody from finance, operations, administration kind of functions? Good to have you here. How many folks from technology, IT, R&D? Awesome, rest of you. Good, good, thank you so much. So I have a question for this audience, and I would like to understand from you where you stack about 3 different parts of any organization. And I want you to tell me which one of them you think is the most significant. I'll start with how many of you think the shareholders are the most important. Shareholders are the ones who bring in the money. Without the money, you can't build products, you don't have anything that you can sell. So how many of you think shareholders are the most important for an organization? None. You're smart. I know you're part of the function, so you have this. Thank you so much. There's one at least voting for the shareholders, the guys who have the votes. Yes. So I think I think you know where this is going. So I won't take it much further into it. So the second category are your customers. So customers are the ones who are going to pay for your products. Without customers, there's no business that's going. So how many of you think customers are the most important? Awesome, good. We have a good number going there. So how many of you think employees, the ones who are working, how many of you think they're the most important? Good. So this is a reflection of, we had similar numbers going in for customers and employees. So I did a little bit of a check in terms of where we are as a world. So I searched for this term customer satisfaction, and there are about 7.5 million search results on Google today. Search for employee satisfaction, 500,000 search results. So even though we think employee satisfaction is significant, we're doing 15 times more for customer satisfaction, but not as much for employee satisfaction, which is why the session becomes that much more important, where we need to do a lot more here. I mean, we are not yet able to link employee experience, employee satisfaction to business impact, where there have been enough results that say it's very tightly correlated, but our actions, things that we do, are not connected. So we'd like to quickly introduce this panel. I'm being extremely lucky to have a panel like this. So, and I'll tell you what's so unique about this panel. Any of you who have HR tech ideas, this is the panel to pitch. And I'll tell you why. So we have Ajay and Shashank here, HR leaders, who will tell you if the problem that you're looking at is worth solving. And we have Arun, who will tell you if the technology and the data science behind it is scalable. And finally, we have Sudhir, who's a CIO, who will tell you if the enterprise will put money into your solution that you're building. So we have a fantastic panel. And before we get started, while we have introduced each of the panelists, I want a line from each of you guys to tell a little bit about what your company is, maybe 20 seconds, but then to get a context of what's the background that you operate in. Maybe we'll start from that, and Shashank, briefly about BMC.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure being here. BMC Software is one of the largest independent software vendors in the world. The focus is, and the tagline says, we bring IT to life. BMC products help drive the IT agenda for organizations, and that's what we do for a living.
Sure.
Okay, I am coming from Continental Automotive. We are automotive technology supplier for global OEMs, and in terms of ranking, we call ourselves as one among the top five. Don't ask me whether we are 2, 3, 4, or 1, but it keeps changing. And then what we do locally in India is ours is an R&D organization having around 2,000 engineers, and we provide R&D and software support to the corporation globally.
Good afternoon. Compared to all these gentlemen, I come from a very small company. I have a startup in the HR analytics space. We are a product company. So I'm building a product for integrated platform for continuous employee feedback, engagement. It's very happy to hear people say, people want to know on a daily basis, right? That's kind of what we do. Okay, feedback in any form within the organization in a continuous basis.
Sudhir?
Hi, my name is Sudhir. I work for Aricent. Aricent is a global design and engineering services company, and we actually we are here. We exist to solve our customers' technology innovation problems. We've been around for 25 years, and
Thank you. Thank you. So that's the panel for you today. So diving straight into the topic. So there's a question for you, Ajay. So while the panels have spoken about, just to set the context in which we're going to talk about, can you define employee experience for us in the multiple dimensions that it has, and why do we need to talk about ownership of employee experience? Why is there a certain uncertainty there?
Okay, I think before getting into the question, I can just relate with my own experience, my personal experience. About year and a half, I moved from a company to Continental. On the day one, when I reached the office premise, to my surprise, there was one of my colleague, the new colleague, with a chocolate in hand. I do not know where this AI worked really well, that she understood that I like chocolate a lot, because no social media captured that, even by mistake. And then I was escorted to my work office, and then everything was very well ready, including the laptop, my name back. I have an address there. And then within few seconds, the phone started ringing. I don't even know what is my extension board number and so on. And then the person along with me saying that there's a call for you. And call was from our global HR head. Welcome to the team Continental. You can imagine that's the kind of moment of truth which I had experienced on the day one. Then throughout the day, I was just trying to reflect, is this the maturity this organization has already reached? Then what is the job I have in hand? If everything is working so very well, I don't think that, I don't know whether I can fulfill that statement, but you can imagine. So now moving further, if this question, what is employee experience, if this question was asked to all of us, including the gentleman from HR few years ago, most probably the answer will be what you do in office and what you get in return. But today, the same question, the scope has widely increased. It starts right the moment you step out of your house in the morning till the time you reach back, including the travel time, including the time where you are received at the office, that security staff looking at with a staring is, who is this stranger coming in, or shaking your hand, and then going to the workplace, saying hi, hello, good morning to the rest of the colleagues and so on. Every single experience, perception, feeling, feedback, what we gather throughout the day, put together is an experience. Now the question is that who owns the whole chain of experience? When I travel by my car or public transport to reach office from wherever I am, where I'm supposed to reach, majority of these moments of truth are not influenced or controlled by the company where I am working for. But still, if there is something that goes wrong, there is a tendency to say that my experience was not good at traveling because my office is based very far. We don't realize that it's not company is very far. I am very far from the company. We can lift our bag and then shift near to office, but that is secondary because that is inside in our control. But fact is that there is lot more moments throughout the day we start creating a picture of experience, and that influence our sense of belongingness or engagement with the company. Now the question is, who takes the ownership of the whole chain of experience? Is it one person? is it the person who is sitting in the biggest cabin of the organization called Chief Executive Officer? Is responsible for everything? My answer is a no. There are lots of stakeholders who influence directly, and then certain element of ownership with the self also. But if there is one person who has the largest stake, it is the manager. He is, or he or she is the person who can influence to make it everything positive. But at the same time, the question is who is responsible and who is accountable. If there is one person who is accountable in creating a right experience story, I would say it is HR.
Thank you. I'll use that point that you made to continue the conversation with Shashank. So, Shashank, we were talking about accountability and responsibility and how sometimes the lines are gray and it's hard for the folks, especially outside of the HR function, to take ownership of this aspect and take it forward so that you deliver a unified, uniform experience to employees. Can you tell us a little more about it?
So before we get to that, I think one of the things that we need to understand well is, employee experience means different things to different people and different kinds of people. We have to be cognizant of the fact that today more than half of our population, of our employee population, is millennials. But that also means there is another half of the population which is not millennial, which is the Gen X, and their need for experience could be different from that of the millennials. So we bring in a lot of focus towards saying, okay, because it's millennial workforce, we need to get digital, which is true, which is where the world is heading out to. But so the thought process one needs to keep in mind is that while you are thinking of different generations, you're thinking of different kind of experiences to people, how you deliver to them is becomes that much more important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, Arun, we were talking about in terms of ownership of employee experience. You've had an inside view, having been building solutions for our corporates, and you've been talking to a lot more companies. So, where do you think I'm sure when you're selling your solution, there is somebody who's talking, but then users are going to be different. So, where do you see the gap between the accountability, responsibility, and how do you think that's shared in an organization from your experience?
Look, has anybody seen the movie Ender's Game or read the book The Ender's Game? There's one gentleman, brilliant book. If you haven't, please read it. It's a science fiction book, okay? And the premise is very simple. Sometime in the future, young kids, very smart kids, are taken up into space, and they're trained to be army generals because there's a race of aliens who's going to attack us. Now, they have these mock battles in zero gravity, okay? And there's this young kid, one of the youngest kids in this lot, who really beats everybody else, whose team beats everybody else. The reason they do that is because while everybody else has got this typical hierarchical structure, the army, this thing, this kid, Ender, he basically tells everybody, okay, there are these all small battalions or platoons, you guys do whatever you want. The central goal is to get that. You do whatever you want within your small teams to enable that. The reason I'm telling this is because I strongly believe the days of HR directed, top-down, top-driven era is over, right? We are moving. Agile is now the buzzword. Everybody says agile. It's not just for technology. It is equally applicable for managers, right? And so you're going to have managers who are going to be the owners, in my opinion. I completely agree with Ajay here. I think managers need to be the owner. Where I might slightly disagree with Ajay, and that might be because he's HR, I'm not, is because he thinks HR is still accountable. I believe both the responsibility and accountability will rest with the individual managers, and that will happen when technology enables managers to have the data at their fingertips. Right now, managers really don't have a clue, right? They don't really have a platform which tells them, here's where you're good, here's where you're not good, here are the challenges, here are the pain points in your team. Once you have technology enabling that, then managers can take the decisions.
Sure, thank you so much.
If I could add, I think on the same lines, the role of the HR, or if I were to backtrack and say, what does BMC do? In BMC, the head of HR is now called the Chief Experience Officer, and IT, facilities, and HR rolls up to the same individual. And the reason and rationale is very, very simple. These are the three key functions which kind of build the framework of the experience that the employees are looking for. And the managers are those vehicles that deliver that experience down to the employees. So if you were to, if we have to really quantify and say who owns and who is responsible, I would say in some sense, say in BMC is the chief experience officer who is responsible to build the frameworks, but the delivery of that is completely dependent on how the managers provide that experience to people. Whether it is about how they are hired, how do we find them, how do we grow them, how do we engage with them, how do we make them feel part of the family, and what kind of values we live in. I mean, you could have beautiful frameworks, but if your value system is screwed up, then that experience goes for a toss completely.
Sure, absolutely. I fully agree with you on that. So in the previous panel, we actually touched upon employee experience and how today technology is a medium through which employee experience is often delivered, though that's not the only medium, but we are taking the support of technology. But then I have Sudhir here he brings in a CIO perspective. And today, I think like we already spoke about in the earlier panel, people are exposed to a very high class of technology, whether it's you're using the Amazon on the website, on the phone, Uber, whatever, name it, the kind of experience that you have as a user is top class. But then what happens to that when you come into an enterprise? What about enterprise applications? So I want you to tell us a little more about how you are managing the gap. There's definitely going to be a gap, but then how do you manage that?
Absolutely. So when it comes to technology, without a doubt, the consumer world sets the pace, and enterprise world is trying to mimic or follow. But you don't need to resist it, and you have to try. And it's not easy because there's a lot of stuff that's legacy. Then a lot of people are moving to cloud. Cloud is beautiful, but the point is you can't tinker around with anything. Cloud is very good when you are entering, but it so happens that once you enter and you want to make changes based on your needs, it's not going to be as easy because it's going to be on their roadmap, right? One of the things that we try to do at Aricent to address that question is, we said, first of all the solutions have to be built user forward. Users should be at the center of design, not technology backward. That's number one. Second, we said, how do people use technology in the consumer world? 80% of you, if you want anything, whether it's a movie ticket, a dinner reservation, or what have you, you just naturally go for your phone, and Google icon is on the first screen, and then you just look restaurants near me or book my tickets or something like that, and the application, if not the first click and the second or third click, is with you. So we said, can an employee walk in today like you walked in on that day, after the first day of physical experience, the second day when the world gets real and you have to enter the digital world, and then can you just go ahead and say expense or travel? Somebody tells him to travel to Delhi. Can you just say travel? And then would the results on your intranet or the portal one portal that you have for your company bring up the application just like Google brings it, with the same degree of accuracy, with same type of refiners? You click, the travel policy comes up. Your second bet is your travel application. You click on the travel application. It's as intuitive as your Yatra or Make My Trip or what have you, Travelocity. We wanted to do that. That is number one. So we said we have something called Aricent World that we have created, which is a one-stop portal for the employee to do anything and everything at that place. And it is powered by commercial grade search. Second thing, as you want to learn more about the company, do you have to go through a 2-day, 3-day training? Or just you learn these days, if you want to buy a house in HSR layout or what have you, you go and type what you want to look at. Maps comes up and some demographic of that area comes up. Same thing, can you do that with learning the company? So is your social, is your knowledge base on the portal, everything powered by search, equally good enough? I think we are investing in those areas. We are trying to just make sure it comes very, very close to that consumer experience. We're not there yet, but we are definitely on the path. And I think our physical and digital experience both define the employee experience. And to Shashi's comment, the facilities, the HR, IT are key cogs in all of this.
Absolutely. So you're saying the rigor that goes into building consumer products has to go into building internal products as well, in terms of user research, in terms of design, in terms of all of those aspects.
Absolutely. And
fantastic.
You have to just give them the ability to give that feedback instantly. In the consumer world, if people don't like your stuff, they're monitoring you at every moment, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
looking to see, oh, this person got off at the third field in the form. He's not going to buy your product. I mean, they spend tons of money on analytics for that kind of stuff. How many of us are monitoring how many of our application pages are being visited? Most of you would have a portfolio of 50, 60 applications. How many of you know how much of it is being used on a daily basis? You know, running analytics to see whether people are using it. Second thing is, if people are getting stuck at some point and leaving or calling somebody, all these are things that you can do just like in the consumer world, but you have to create that mindset.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fully agree. I think that's a good point to talk about it, Arun.
Just jump in quickly.
Yeah.
So, you made a great point, right? I always draw this analogy with customer experience. So, in customer experience, every organization is really worried about what the customer goes through at every touch point the customer has with the organization. We all say our employees are our greatest assets. Employees have way more touch points with the organization than customers do. But again, extending what he said in terms of at what point do they get off an application form, there are way more touch points that you can actually start to look at to figure out what is the pain point, because all of these touch points is what ultimately adds up to the overall employee experience.
So, Arun, why don't you then talk about a couple of examples that you were discussing, where companies have used technology to improve employee experience?
Sure. So there was this one IT services company we went into, and they were struggling because they said, when we look at our Glassdoor results, they're really poor. Okay, so we want to understand what's going on. So once people leave the company, they're telling a lot, but what's going on internally? So once they started using this kind of continuous feedback, they realized that there were pockets of, I wouldn't say dissidence, but disaffection maybe, or where they really weren't very, very happy, and you could clearly make out which aspects were making them unhappy. And so then they started putting in quick plans, and rather than waiting for a year, at the end of the year, I call these year-end surveys postmortems. It tells you the patient died, it tells you the patient had 4th stage cancer. If you had told me when it was a benign tumor, I could have done something about it. So these people actually started to work on certain aspects very, very quickly. And I think another example, this is a hotel chain where one particular intervention that these have done, or one particular policy that had been implemented, was causing a lot of heartburn, right? Now, obviously, it comes about that, okay, people are unhappy about it, but that's where you have the power of analytics, where you say, okay, people are also putting in textual feedback. And while simple word clouds can tell you a lot, if you have 1,000 messages pouring in, you really don't have the opportunity to look at all of that and figure it out. What algorithms can do is actually extract themes around the conversations that are happening and really pick up and say, okay, in this department, these are the themes and these are the words that are being used to describe these themes, and you better watch out. Kind of thing. So I think that's a couple of places where I've seen analytics helping to improve employee experiences.
Thank you so much. Now, Sudhir, we were also talking about in terms of measuring, or in consultant speak, what's the governance model around employee experience. But then experience is such an intangible. But, so how do you think, or what do you think are the best practices around how can this whole thing be measured? How do you get a sense of where?
So I'll come to the measurement part, which is very important, and there are traditional measurements that happen annually, like the voice of the employee or employee satisfaction, or the great places to work. All of them have good stuff, and they need to be done. You have trending year after year, so that is something that you need to do. But to measure employee experience is not just one area. There's so many areas that you have to measure, and not everybody participates. I see some people say, oh, how many of your company people use social? It's not a mandate for somebody to use social. I mean, there are a lot of younger people who may use social, but some people may not use it. That doesn't mean they're good or bad. So what I recommend is, if you take a healthy environment, when you walk into it, you know about it. It is visible. You can feel it, right? In Aricent, what we do, for example, is we have several avenues for employees to engage with the company, with peers, and in the area of their hobbies or interest. We have things like hackathon, we have things like Get Sporty. We have things, yes, like social, where people write case studies or deposit knowledge assets. And then there are communities, vibrant communities that we have. All of these require to be measured. We don't put it all into a dashboard, but anything we do, we measure. If there is Get Sporty this year compared to last year, we had about 4,000 people participate in all the sports out of a 10,000 people company. That's significant participation. And in hackathon, which we have in 24 hours of continuous coding, very intense coding, they have to come up with a product idea that the panel thinks is worthy of taking to the market. So things like that are pretty important to do. We have to just engage them a lot more in the physical sense. And when it comes to digital sense, we actually definitely look, we've created on Aricent World something very simple like a profile, We are checking regularly to see how many people have updated their profile, because that's how we match people to the jobs they like, the skills that they have, and things like that. So, and we do different things to ensure if you can update it on LinkedIn, what is missing here, what is not exciting about it here that you won't update it. So we start doing some contests, we start doing some things. On social we measure, and then on knowledge assets we measure. It's not one thing, unfortunately, but I would say everything, it is tangible. Take something as simple as food. We have a food committee, let us say. There are a panel of 12 people that can come together every quarter, and then they taste everything and they say, hey, this food is good or bad, the tea is good or bad, coffee is good or bad. And then you act on it. So I think going back to the initial comment from you on employee experience, you have to create a company that has a culture of providing employee experience. It's a cultural thing. It's not about one person. It's not HR, IT. All of us should make the peers feel joyful at the workplace. That's where I think employee experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very relevant. So I'll take off from the culture part of it you mentioned. One last question before we open it to Q&A, but I would like all of you to help me find answers to that question. In terms of while we agree that employee experience is important, significant, and all of those good things that we talk about, how do we get this into leadership conversations? How do we get this to be significant enough that the leadership is talking about it, demonstrating significance of employee experience? So, and I would want all of you to respond, starting from Shashank.
So I think, this starts from the question that you asked at the start of the session when you said, what is more important, shareholder value, customers or employees. I think that realization by itself is one of the biggest accomplishments or a building block for us to say whether employee experience is important and how do we provide that to people. If we intrinsically believe, I think there's been a lot of nice talk and desirable conversations about or saying that employees are important. At a leadership level, it's very important to internalize that and say, yeah, that actually is important. If you have happy employees results into happy customers, and happy customers results into better shareholder value. So that level of conversation is very, very important, and that requires a lot of candidness within the organization. At leadership level, there needs to be a level of trust and camaraderie where you could have those conversations and not feel that you are being pushed around. And I think that would be one of the most important elements.
Thank you, Shashank. Ajay?
I think the same point which I have, that happy customer is an outcome or output of happy employees. So if the management want to communicate very clearly without any doubt to the employees, then it means that we have to keep asking or gauging the level of satisfaction or the overall atmosphere what we provide to employees on a continuous basis. Many conventional companies, where I was part of in the past, we go and ask the employees once in a year as a kind of a ritual, giving some series of questions and online mode and all, saying that, are you satisfied with this? And then finally, at the end of the day, as Arun said, it is not a yearly exercise. It is something which because yesterday I was happy does not mean that today I retain that status. Happiness is a relative quotient. It is situation based, and it is it largely influenced by recency effect. How I have been treated today influence my belongingness to the company. Not that last year I got a good hike, so I will continue to be happy till the time I get my increment letter next year. No, it is not that way. So in the previous discussion, I heard that when a person step out of the office, you have smiley. Today, was it a good day for me? I think that kind of a instant, quick feedback, and then followed by action, response by the management, and which should be loud and clear to the employee, saying that I am important to this organization.
So response to feedback is extremely significant. Yes, Arun.
So just take a slightly, I'm a data guy, so I'll take a data look at this, right? Walter Deming said, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So if you're talking to the C-suite, my experience has been data and how it affects, like Shashank and Ajay said, how it affects the ultimate top and bottom line is what matters. I mean, we can go blue in our faces saying how wonderful it is to have a great employee experience, but unless we can talk numbers and throw some numbers, and there's enough research out there to show, I read somewhere that in the US alone, nearly $550 billion of losses every year because of disengaged employees. And in the US, apparently, the percentage of actively engaged employees, does anyone want to hazard a guess as to what that would be? Come on. 20%, 28%, 30, 50, 14. It's actually 13 or 14%. It's abysmally low. And so, to me, and there's research to show that if you have for every 1% decrease in employee engagement, it impacts your safety incidents, your net profit, the top line, everything. So I think having those sort of, to have that conversation, you need that kind of data.
Thank you.
And I'm going to be slightly controversial. It's difficult in these days to do that because we've just heard the previous panel and some others talk about flexibility, working from anywhere. All of us have kids. If your kid is living in the hostel versus living with you, where do you get more connect or experience, right? So you have to do certain things because the world is going a certain way. But in that context, the engagement models are different. If everybody is in a campus, engagement models are easy. The CEO walks the floor once in a week. He picks a floor, he walks, he chats with the people or has coffee with them. But if you're a global company and if people are all over the place, how do you engage with people? It's very easy for some 5-member team in Italy to feel completely left out.
Disengaged.
They're not part of the office Christmas party. They're not part of the Diwali celebration. It's just not easy, right? Yeah. So I think we have to think about it in how we do it, how we engage all employees. Getting it to the C-suite, I think at least our CEOs very, very focused on it because we are a services company and our asset is our employees really. And to that extent, he gets all the data. On top of that, he's based out of the US. Whenever he visits whichever location, he makes it a point to actually have a session with all the managers and he walks the floors as well. Sure. So that's one thing. And then digital data is already available. He gets, I think from HR perspective, he has got about 20 metrics on a dashboard. Wow. Right from, attrition ratios to voluntary to involuntary, all the standard and then he does do reviews. So to that extent, he gets
excellent. Thank you so much. Now it's time to open up this to the audience. So any questions from any of you? Sure. Somebody can run the mics for me, please.
Most of the panel is discussing about HR engagement and how to engage the employees and all. It is a journey for an employee. Because is there any plan that is we are going to put it together for an employee journey? Because if you look at it in Google, if you type customer journey for a telecom company, that's the same journey for entire telecom company. Same thing for the multiple domains. But if you combine all those domains and you are going to say that as what is the employee experience, it's going to be the same. They need to come to office, they need to get a laptop and everything. Okay? So why not we can have a framework for an employee journey where we can have an automation like, okay, I started in the morning, okay, I'm late. By 11 o'clock I have a meeting, but anyway I'm not able to get up and I'm not able to start it. So let my mobile say that as you have an 11 o'clock meeting, let me connect you to the bridge. So connect it, stay on. So that is the employee experience which is going to transform the future generation now.
Sure.
Because if it is something like I'm going to stay with you come to office to attend a meeting, I think most of the meetings I'll skip it. Right?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that input. Anybody else has a question? Somebody in the back.
Hi, this is Prasanna here. Sudhir touched upon this point just a while ago, but I have more specific question.
Sure.
Because
Is it to one of the? Is it to one of them or?
I mean,
Sure.
anybody can answer,
Sure.
but Sudhir addressed it.
Yeah, sure.
In the current geopolitical scenario and the business climate, when you're working in a truly global company, you have forced shutdowns in one part of the geography, and you have growth happening in the other part of the geography. Obviously, there's more energy in the growth region, and then there's little amount of energy in the region where it's impacted. How do you balance out this employee engagement when you are actually truly working as a global organization? Manage both the employee engagement, the experience that the people have when they join and when they leave the organization. It's same.
Fantastic question. I think that's extremely relevant in today's context. I think I'll open it to any of you to take it. I think it's a very relevant question.
I think it's a very, very valid question. I don't think anybody's really cracked this code. This is the perennial challenge that we all are facing, especially in global setup. It's like a balloon. You know, you press at one end, it blows up at the other, and then it goes back. I think what works for most organizations who do it well in whatever sphere they are is the amount of communication and the kind of communication that they do, the amount of authentic conversation that they have. You know, we can get as digital as we can, and we will. But there is, even at this point, there is no replacement of authenticity and genuineness of your communication. And how much do the leaders show up positively in these situations will actually determine how successful you are or not. And then obviously there are other, you know, various things at play. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with the consequences of it? How are you, you know, building upon it is all important.
Thank you so much. You want to add?
Yeah, I agree with Shashi. I think we are all running businesses, and there will be ups and downs. And the only thing that you need to do, and at least I've seen from successful leaders and our current CEO as well, if the intent is genuine and you are being fair, communicate the facts, people will understand. And people have always understood, no matter how difficult the message was, if your intent was genuine and you were being fair, you can communicate the facts, but you should communicate.
Absolutely agree with you. Sure. One last question. If there's anything, we're past time. Sure. Thank you so much. Go.
This is a question to Ajay. Just wanted to know on the lighter side, do you continue the same what experience you got on the day one to every employee, or is it that because you are head of the company, your manager has set that expectation?
Good question. Is it scalable? Is that the question?
Yeah, in
Yep.
fact, that was a question which I had. If this is the way each of the employee get on the day one and every day, we need to have a good tie-up with a chocolate manufacturing company, one. Second thing is that the maturity has to be much more on a lighter sense. But then I realized, and then we'll have to define a matrix in terms of based on the seniority of the person, the chocolate size has to be adjusted. More senior, the bigger this thing.
My question was not on the chocolate experience, but the manager, the moment you are there, within a second, there's a call for you.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So it was, to me, it was more of a shocking experience. I mean, to be very honest, and then maybe it was an impression, message to me saying that this is the kind of organization you are supposed to build it here, and we are on that journey.
So have you built that? Does your manager?
In fact, as I said, it is not that easy to bring such kind of moments of truth on a consistent, because it's talking about the scalability and then sustainability of that. We are moving towards that, and then in our kind of business, this is more of not a luxury; it is a necessity. In an R&D kind of an organization, we can't afford to lose people because it's not an IT company where you can relatively easily replace talent with somebody else who is working in the neighboring company, where the domain knowledge of the person is far more important than anything else. So we are in the process of making the experience of people much more attractive and interesting. And then that is where this element of difference between me and Arun, that who is responsible, I still say it is HR. And Arun still continue to say it's manager. Reason being, my responsibility is to make sure that managers are enabled to do that. It is not that I have to make sure that every person's experience is the best, but managers are equipped to do what they are supposed to do beyond the managing the people, but as a mentor, as a guide, as a buddy, as a friend, and as a coach to make sure that, that's how we can make sure that every single person, every single employee in the company have the most desired level of experience each day, every day. So to summarize the answer, we are on that journey.
Okay.
Positively. Yeah.
My next question follows on to that. Actually, I come from Siemens, so I am completely with you as a product-based company, and the domain makes a lot of sense to hold. Some of the panels were saying it is the manager's holds the responsibility when I'm coming with the employee experience. Every employee, it's not the manager. If you promote an ownership culture in an organization, every employee gives an experience to the employee who joined. And today, if a manager comes and meets, it's more of a shocking experience, as what Ajay told. But if a peer goes and meets him and take him a cup of coffee, there's a completely different experience that they get onto that. And the millennials want to touch with the people which of their age rather than one who gives the gap. This is my opinion. I don't know how many, some of you are saying it's the manager's manager, but I see it.